Well, hi. I just want to say for those of you out there who are students, who are constantly worried and obsessed with your grades and passing tests and exams and making it a whole stressful experience, that in reality, your grades don't really matter unless you think they do. Because if you think about it, it's just a mark on a piece of paper. And that mark has no significance or meaning unless you think it does. It's just like, like a basketball game. If you think the basketball game matters, then it does. But if you think it doesn't, then it doesn't. I mean, it really has no meaning. It's just there. It's just a thing that ultimately doesn't really matter one way or another. But in the case of grades, it's actually also a control system to it's like a reward and punishment system to make you feel like you have to perform, like you have to obey and do well in school, and it's a way for them to control your self-worth. I mean, they want you to think that your success and your self-worth is determined by your grades, which is not true, because all you have to do to make that not true is to not believe that your grades define your self-worth, because in reality they don't, unless you think it does. So if you just look at your grades and see it for what they are, it's just a mark on a piece of paper, and it can't hurt you, then that's all it is. It doesn't define you, it doesn't determine your self-worth. I mean, you don't have to feel bad just because you did bad on a test. I mean, I've gotten D's and F's on tests before, and I haven't given them a second thought, because I chose a long time ago when I was in school not to attach my self-worth to my grades, and so it never made me depressed or sad to get a bad grade, because I just never saw any meaning or significance to it. I never saw the logic in attaching my self-worth to my grades, just because everyone else does, or because the school says so. I mean, people are always going to try to control you, especially society, and even your friends. They're always going to pressure you to conform and to think a certain way and to believe something for no other reason than because everyone else does. But that's not a good reason to believe in something. You should think for yourself and believe in something because it makes sense, because it has real value, or it has some wisdom. But not just because everyone says so or because authority says so. Because one of the biggest secrets is that authority is not truth. Truth is the authority. And that is very true, but most people don't know that, because they're conditioned from childhood to believe that authority is truth, and that whatever authority says, whatever is official, must be true. And there's no logical basis in that if you think about it, none at all. People just believe that because they're conditioned to. There's not a basis, there's not a valid reason to believe that. I mean, there's no evidence that authority equals truth. That's just how you're supposed to believe, because that's how the people that control society can control you. It's all a control system, and that's what grades are. It's there to control you to think in the left brain manner, just like David Icke says, so that you'll see life in terms of hierarchy, authority, details, obedience, conformity, etc. Because left brain people tend to conform more. They don't think for themselves. They just believe whatever they're told. And the purpose of taking tests in school is so you can be more obedient. And how that works is you memorize all this useless data. Every day you memorize volumes and volumes of useless raw data, and then you regurgitate it on tests. And logically it's pointless, because after the test you forget all that information. So what's the point of that? Well, David Icke and other conspiracy researchers have explained this, that the purpose of that is to train your mind to obey, to be obedient. You see, when you take in information and then repeat it on tests, that trains you to listen, to follow, obey, and to repeat. It just trains you to be an obedient person who does what he's told and thinks what he's told. And so that's the real purpose of tests in school and the whole school system. Because, I mean, deep down, every student knows that, all these tests are meaningless because you memorize all this useless data that you're not going to need in your life. And then you take it, you take a test with it, and then you forget it. So what's the point of that? What's the purpose? What's the value? Well, there is none. And every student knows that deep down, but they're afraid to question it because they think if everyone else is doing it, then it must be right. So, so the only logical explanation that makes sense is that this whole process is to train you to be obedient, to conform, to do what you're told, to think as you're told. It's just, so you can become an obedient slave who conforms. So that's how the control system works, and it also, teaches you to believe that your purpose in life is to be a slave, is to work, and that's why in America and in Asia, predominantly, there's this live to work mentality, where people see the only purpose in life is to work, and without work, most people are empty. They have no other purpose in life. They have no reason to live. They have no ability to create a purpose in life. And when they have free time, they don't know what to do. They have no purpose other than to work. They live to work. So it's like they have. It's like the system conditions you to be dependent on being a slave. And if you're not a slave, then you're empty and depressed and you have nothing to do. And that's a really sad state of affairs. But that's how the control system works. You're conditioned from childhood to obey. And then when you're a teenager, you're taught that the purpose in your life is to work. And that's all you ever do. And that's all most people ever do throughout most of their lives. And so they never really find a purpose or create a purpose or experience true freedom, true joy. They don't, seek adventure or new experiences. Instead, what most people seek is a stable job, a stable family to raise, and a very routine life that revolves around that, where every day they go to the same place to work, they commute, do have the same commute, go to the same house, and so life is just a routine where you see the same things and experience the same things every day. And in truth, it's really boring, but you're conditioned to want that because you're conditioned to want stability and routine, not freedom, new experiences, or adventure. So the downside to that is, I mean, in a sense, it's very secure and safe, but it just, that kind of routine just takes all the fun and the passion out of life. Because, I mean, it's just a waste of life to live like that, because you don't really live up to your full potential. You don't see what the world has to offer. You don't, if you don't have new experiences every day, you really are missing out on the world. And another big downside to living a life of routine is that, this is a little bit hard to explain, but I'll try my best. When you see the same people and see the same routine every day and you have no new experiences, time actually goes faster because without new stimulation or new experiences to focus on, for some reason the time seems to go faster, because when your brain has nothing to process and it just goes through an automatic routine which your subconscious mind can handle, time just seems to just go faster, and your life goes by faster, and you don't have those special experiences or meaningful experiences to remember by. But on the other hand, if you were traveling, for instance, and meeting wonderful people and having wonderful new experiences every day, then every day your mind would be locked on something new to process, to learn, to stimulate you. And when you experience something new every day or every moment or every hour, it's like living a new life, a new experience. It's like I mean, that actually slows down time for some reason, because every moment is more meaningful, and when every moment is meaningful, you focus on it. Time seems to stand still, and it seems to move slower than if your life was just a routine. I mean, that's something I've experienced, and that's something really interesting that you should take into account. That if you want your life to not go by as fast, and time to slow down, and to have more meaningful experiences, that a life of routine is not going to give you that. You need to have a life where you can travel more, or have more new experiences, have more exploration, adventure, or meet new people, or find a job that lets you travel and have new experiences rather than the same office and the same house and the same family. I mean, I guess some people like that, to have the same thing every day and a routine. There are many people that like that, of course, but I'm not one of them, obviously, and many people out there are not. So it's just something to keep in mind, that that time does go faster if you're in a routine, and it goes slower if you're not in a routine and having new experiences every day. So that's something interesting that I've learned. But the important thing is to think for yourself, and not live in fear, because fear puts you at a low vibration of consciousness. It puts you at a low awareness level, and when you're at a low awareness level, you don't have much control over your life. You're always in survival mentality, and you're constantly living in fear of survival, and your potential is never realized. But when you stop living in fear, and you start taking control of your mind and your life, your consciousness will go up much higher, and your awareness level goes up much higher. And then when you do that, you actually allow the universe to open up new doors, and to allow more things to happen. So you're in a greater position to create your own reality, in other words. And once you're in that position where you can create your own realities, the universe, your life becomes more of like a limitless boundary of possibilities. You allow yourself to enter into that realm where into the realm of possibility rather than limitations. Whereas if you're living in fear, then you always see limitations everywhere. But if you're living, not in fear, and you're following your heart, your passion, your potential, without that fear, then you're living in a world of possibilities, and the universe will reward you for that. It'll, bring people and events in your life that'll help you to realize a higher potential. And I've definitely experienced that too, and that's an important lesson to keep in mind. Of course, the control system doesn't want you to know about that, but it's an important, valuable lesson. And there's a lot of documentaries and videos on YouTube about this, and there's a lot of alternative researchers that talk about this, like David Icke or Mark Passio or Michael Sarian, Jordan Maxwell, Alan Watts. There's a lot of great researchers out there from America and England that are talking about this, how to awaken yourself and be free of the control system. And I've actually written a really good article on this, which I'll try to link in the description box below. But the important thing to keep in mind is that in order to have true freedom in your life, it begins in your mind. That's where true freedom begins. It begins in your mind. And that's where you have to stop living in fear. From there, the rest will flow more naturally. But only you can free your own mind, okay, and you have to want to. Nobody else is going to free your mind for you. People will help you, of course, will guide you, and like awakened people can help you and guide you. But what I mean is, society is not going to give you freedom, and the government is not going to give you freedom either, or free your mind. They don't want that. They want to control you. That's what other people are there for, especially society. They're there to control you, to make you a productive slave, and to judge you based on your productivity. So they want to control you, and they want you to be a good slave. So they're never going to give you freedom or wisdom. Same with the mainstream media. I mean, they're there to scare you, to make you live in fear, to live to work. I mean, the media, they're not there to make you smart or give you wisdom or anything. I mean, that's not what the media is there for either. So, I mean, you can't expect institutions or media or government or society to give you freedom. They're not. That's not what they're there for. So you have to find that freedom for yourself, and to make those choices to give you more freedom, to live a more holistic life, to live a simpler life with less burden, less debt. That's important. Less burden, less debt, less obligations and burdens, and less problems, less stress. Because if you think about it, the two most important things in life are health, which is priceless, and peace of mind. I mean, without peace of mind, you can't be happy. You can never live a peaceful, authentic, genuine, passionate life without peace of mind. And of course, your health is important, because without health, you can't do anything, even if you have all the money in the world. So those two things are important, health and peace of mind. And if you try to be too materialistic and try to get the biggest house and the biggest car and put yourself in debt, that's not going to give you peace of mind, because then you have all this burden to pay off this debt, and then you have to go to a stressful job every day and make more money and be a slave again. And so it's not going to give you peace of mind to be more materialistic. I mean, society wants you to be more materialistic because they want you to work and consume, but it's not in your best interest. Instead, it's better to have a simpler life, less burden, more peace of mind, which will lower your cost of living, and in turn it will allow you to have a less stressful and more peaceful life, and that's what's going to give you peace of mind. That's what's going to give you better health too. So that's something to keep in mind. If you think about it, here's another important lesson. The happiest people in the world, and a lot of travelers will tell you this too, like perpetual travelers, they'll tell you that the happiest people in the world are not those who have too much or too little, but those who have just enough. And that's really telling, because if you go to like the richest countries in the world, for example, America or Japan, I mean, those two countries are really wealthy, but if you look at the faces of most people walking around, I mean, they don't look happy at all. They're overworked, they're stressed, they're annoyed with problems, and they're very high-strung. And the suicide rate in America and Japan are very high. And so obviously the wealth of the nation didn't bring happiness to the people. I mean, money doesn't buy happiness in that sense. So Japan is a really good example. I mean, people, are really empty inside and depressed, and there's a high suicide rate there, and life is just way overstressed. In some ways, even more than in America. I mean, there's a lot of people there working 15 hours a day, with 1 day off or 0 days off, and they're just way overworked, and they have no purpose other than to be a slave, and they're taken advantage of and told to work 15 hours a day, and pushing their body and their health to the extreme, and it's never a good thing. I mean, it's out of balance. It's too extreme, and it's really insane. But in Japan, people do it because that's what they're told, and that's what everyone else does. And sadly, most Asian people are conformist by nature. They conform to whatever everyone else does because they believe that the purpose in life is to conform, and because they're always thinking their left brain practical mentality, they're always gonna just conform, even if it's insane what they're doing and how they're living. So even though the lifestyle in Japan is totally insane, totally unwise, and totally out of balance, everyone does it because they're conformists. And you have a similar problem in America, where supposedly the nation's really wealthy, but I mean the cost of living is so high, and the healthcare costs are the highest in the world, and people are in debt and everything, and life in America is just so stressful. and the system is sort of set up to be that way um, because I mean you're told to get this house and this car and to be in debt and then work to pay it off, and your life is never stress free or peace, or full of peace because you're always a slave trying to work off the stress and the burden, and our culture teaches you, or tricks you rather, into thinking that having more and being more materialistic and having more things is going to make you happy. And that's a lie. That's a scam, because it doesn't. Because once you have more things, you're more in debt, and you have to pay them off, and you have to work harder. You have more stress, and in the long run, it doesn't make you happy. But you're not supposed to know that. The media is never going to tell you that. For example, when people stop buying too many things, when they stop buying useless junk, the media actually says it's a bad thing, because it's not good for the economy when people stop buying useless junk. So the media is not there to give you peace of mind or freedom. They want you to be in debt and to buy useless junk and to be very materialistic. So the whole system, the media, the society, our culture, the way we're raised, I mean, it is a deception in that you're taught that the more you have, the more happier you have, and more is better. This spiritual author named Wayne Dyer made a good point when he said, where's the peace in the concept that more is better? Because if you believe that having more is going to make you happy, then you can never reach a finish point, because you're always going to think that more is better and more is better, more is better, and it goes to infinity, because there's never an end point where you're happy and satisfied. So if you constantly think that more is better, there's never any peace. It's not a good mentality to have. But that's the mentality that most people have, is that more is better. So that's why if in America or in Japan, even though you have a lot of wealth and material things, if you look around, most people aren't really happy. I mean, because they're deceived. And every wise traveler has told me that the happiest people they've met are not people who have too little or too much, but those who have just enough. I mean, obviously, if you're in extreme poverty, you can't be happy too, because you're starving and you have your food and shelter needs are not met. But if you're in the middle, if you have just enough and not too much or too little, and you have more freedom and peace of mind, that's when you have the most optimal happiness condition. That's when happiness is at its most peak, when it's at its peak and optimum level. So that's another important thing to keep in mind. And these are things that I've learned that from other people too, and from a lot of introspection and reflection. And so I just wanted to share that with you. And I know this is kind of a long rant into a lot of different territories, but I just feel like all these areas that I've talked about are connected. They tie in together. They're related to each other, because they're part of our life, our daily life. Whether you're in school or not, all this still applies to you. So I just wanted to impart that to you, and hope that you'll think about it and meditate on it, and the more you do, the more it'll make sense to you. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to think about it. I want you to think for yourself, and to not take anything on faith, or to believe whatever everyone else does, or what authority does, or what I say. I mean, these are just things for you to consider, think about, meditate on, and I'd say I'm pretty sure that the more you think about these things, the more they'll make sense, and the more you'll realize that that we live in an insane world where people are deceived and into materialism, and deceived into becoming a slave, and to think that life is all about working and never enjoying life, never having freedom or peace of mind, or adventure, or true joy, fulfillment. I mean, obviously, if you're fulfilled, you're not going to strive to get more, or to make more, So they don't want you to be fulfilled, of course. They want you to be inadequate, so that you'll work more and buy more. And it's all a lie. It's all a con. And I think you'll realize that that's the kind of world we live in. It's insane. It's deceptive. And I put together a bunch of quotes I mean, what I was going to say is every great writer, thinker, and philosopher has talked about this. Um, like Mark Twain, Friedrich Nietzsche, Oscar Wilde, Arthur Schopenhauer, Ayn Rand. I mean, there's so many philosophers and great thinkers and writers throughout history that have realized the same thing, that the world is insane, and that the life that most people lead is insane too. So, so I'm not the only one. You know, it's not just me and a bunch of nonconformists. I mean, the greatest writers and thinkers throughout history have said the same things, that the world we live in is based on deception and is insane. And I've actually put together a lot of the quotes from these writers and thinkers and philosophers that say this, and I'll try to put a link to it in the description box so you can see all these quotes. So, you know, having the greatest minds and greatest free thinkers in history concur with what I'm telling you is actually a great validation that you know what I've told you makes sense and has some meaning and has a lot of truth to it. So if you see that the greatest minds have told you the same thing, then that'll probably lend a lot of credence to what I'm saying. Okay, well, I hope you've learned something from this or gotten something out of it, and best wishes, and I wish you all well. Bye now. Oh, by the way, I've written this really great essay, I think, um, that awakens people to this control system that I've been talking about. And the title of it is called How to Be Free and Conscious in a Society of Enslavement and Fear. And I'm going to include the link to that in the description box so you can follow up and read more in depth and detail about the things that I'm talking about. So, so after this video, I hope you'll check that out, and I think it's a really good essay, and I'd say it's probably one of the best I've ever written, if not the best. And it's very awakening in nature in that I've taken together a lot of what I've learned and put it out there for you in a way that makes sense. So I hope you like that and check that out. Thanks. Bye. Take care. Good morning. Hi again. I just wanted to add some things to last night. First of all, if you're a student and you're trying to choose a career path or deciding what you want to do, I just want to give you an important lesson, which is that it's far better to choose an occupation where you're getting paid less, but you have more free time and more freedom and less stress, than it is to choose something really prestigious, but like a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer or a computer science major or whatever, that'll give you a lot more stress, a lot more pressure, no free time, no freedom. So definitely the former is better than the latter if you think about it, and you'd realize that in the long run. So don't get trapped into thinking that, you know, having a prestigious career is always better, because if you have no free time, I mean, all that money you make is not going to matter because you have no time to spend it or use it. And if you have no peace of mind because of this constant pressure of performing at that career, then you're sacrificing one of the most two biggest things in life. Like I said yesterday, the most important things in life are your health and your peace of mind. And if you choose a career that's not conducive to either one, then it's not going to be good ultimately. So, and if you're under stress all the time and have no free time, then that's obviously detrimental to both your health and your peace of mind. So that's not a good thing. So don't get suckered into thinking that, you know, and don't, you know, just because you're under this pressure by other people or your family to have some prestigious career, you know, it's really not worth it in the end. And this also ties into the other lesson I wanted to tell you about, which is that, like, remember what I said yesterday about true freedom beginning in the mind? Well, in order to be truly free in your mind, you also have to not care what other people think. So what this means is you don't try to live your life according to other people's expectations. Now, this doesn't mean that you should be rude and inconsiderate and impolite. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about living to other people's standards, like meeting their standards. Like if your parents want you to be a doctor or an engineer, but it's not what you want to do, then you shouldn't do it, because it's going to make you unhappy, and it's going to result in ultimate failure if you do something you don't want to just because other people are telling you to. Sure, you can put up an act, but deep down you're not going to be happy because it's not what you want. So that's something to consider, that in order to be truly free, to lift yourself off that burden and to free your mind, you got to not care what other people think about. Because if you're always living in fear of what other people think about, then basically that's another form of living in fear. And like I said, when you live in fear, you're at a very low vibrational state of consciousness, and your awareness level is really low, and it limits your potential, it limits your possibilities. So once you break out of that and you no longer have the fear of what other people think, then a huge burden is lifted off of you. You're no longer living in that fear, and you're free to explore your potential and to do what you want, to follow your passion, and a whole world of possibilities opens up at that point. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. And of course, you can't get rid of fear completely. I mean, fear has a survival purpose, but I mean, the less fear you live in your life, the better. It's better to have less fear than more fear, of course, because fear is a control mechanism. That's all it is, and it inhibits your potential and your possibilities, and it inhibits your who you are. So it's better to have less of it, of course. So those are the two lessons I wanted to share with you, in addition to yesterday's. So I hope you consider them, and take care, and best of luck.